Architects trying to dabble into industrial design may not work. They've done a furniture with carpenter, and suddenly they feel they cater to a
Fair enough.
larger
Okay.
market. It doesn't really work like you have an understanding of the market and the industry. I have a lot of my architect friends who do one or two pieces, and suddenly they feel like they can dabble into this, but it really requires a different kind of thought to get into this field. Taste, what happens is we are working in a field, we are like chefs. So if we don't have appreciation of fine taste for food, we won't be able to cook for others. In creative fields, you can't really train, no matter what the degree, what the schooling, whatever training, it doesn't help as long as you from within yourself cultivate a certain taste and certain perspective of looking at things. Sometimes the client gives us a brief, a very specific brief with certain, so we do the design by understanding what could fit in somewhere, and you then pitch it to them.
Today we have Saif Faisal with us. An architect by training, Saif is the founder of Saif Faisal Design Workshop, specializing in industrial design. His formative years were spent in the fast-paced world of Formula racing, where he honed his skills in driver safety and ergonomics. He later transitioned to woodworking and freelancing before establishing his multidisciplinary creative office in 2014. Saif's work has been showcased in numerous exhibitions including India Design ID and Mezoe Ubje. His designs have also been recognized with prestigious awards like the Editor India, Lexus Design and International Crafts Award. In this episode, we'll be talking to him about his journey as a design entrepreneur, what is design to him, and what can young designers learn from industry leaders like Saif. So, let's get started. Hi, Saif. A very warm welcome to our podcast. I hope you are doing good.
Hi, Soumya, for having me here. I'm doing good.
Great, great. So, I wanted to start with a very basic question. What is industrial design?
Industrial design basically means design services catering to industry where things are mass produced and on a scale. So it's a very wide term because it ranges from very simple objects like your display to very complex components, and some part of it is, as we see now, it also to do with not physical design, but interaction design, UI, UX. It's a very wide range. So basically, it caters to a larger consumer base. So there's a very different approach to design there when doing industrial design as compared to something that is, bespoke design where you have custom-made pieces or something like that. So industrial design, basically, as a designer, as my role as a designer, has to do a lot with collaborating with manufacturers and understanding the markets and everything. So we are designers are basically a small plug-in into the bigger, infrastructure of design industry. You can say that.
Yeah, okay. So, could you tell me, like, how has industrial design evolved over the years?
Basically, industrial design has been, has been there. It's part of our civilization story. So in recent years, you can say that, it's a major component of, how humans have been crafting the physical environment, So everything was pretty much custom made before, industrial design, because every culture was disconnected, and, regions were disconnected. Basically, a small village used to cater for, they used to have their craftsmen who pretty much catered to every need around the population. But as things grew, and now manufacturing ecosystem, which has evolved with capitalism, which is not a very positive thing today. All the issues we face in terms of environment and politics and everything is predominantly determined by that, how the money flows, how the economy flows and everything. But coming back to the design has always evolved with that, So with technology, with modern technology, things which were very local have become very global now. The products products have to be very relevant in, different contexts in different region, different spaces and time. So there is a life cycle to everything that we do, because the technology evolves pretty fast. The computers we use today, or the phones we use today, are not same as the phones we used 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years. So that's the best example. That's a very fast way of evolving industrial design. As the technology evolves, as the consumers' needs evolve, so we have to adapt and change pretty fast. It has happened in automobile design as well. The cars, how they started
Right.
out with the transformation from a buggy, which a motorized buggy, to very complex electronic
Yeah.
options now.
Mhm.
So, maybe, with all these issues of environment and everything, and with the ecology, we may have to move back a bit. So things are moving faster
Hmm.
than we can evolve with it.
I think when you mentioned automobiles, the first thing that came into my mind was self-driving cars,
Hmm.
self-driven cars, and also the solar-powered
Mhm.
cars that we are using right now.
Yeah.
And the electric, there have been many issues with
Yeah.
that. And also, I think AI is another thing.
Yeah. Design needs to design in the sense, I'm speaking in the larger sense of design, not design as a profession, but everything that comes to us has to be tried and tested and then implemented. So no one's waiting for it. They first do it and
Hmm.
let's see what can happen. And they face a lot of issues which they can't fix later. So now things have changed forever and we can't sometimes go back, or even if we go back, the cost is too much. Like,
Yeah.
for example, like electric car. No one thought of recycling, about the batteries and everything. And now we are facing those issues. Even those precious metals, which are
Hmm.
very scarce. It's creating a lot of global unrest because of this monopoly of West and East and everything, China and US and Europe. So all these African nations, which were already reeling from a lot of slavery and issues like that, now they're facing new, which can be solved again. So we have to be. The responsibility lies on everyone,
Hmm.
policymakers and designers, industry, and everyone. So you have to be very careful of this progress as this evolution of everything, which design is a major part of it, which is a manifestation. I mean, like, the whole infrastructure and design is what we see. The product is what we see. Yeah. So we don't see the mining, we don't see the
Hmm.
behind it,
Yeah.
don't see anything. We just see the product, which is a very tiny part of it, which is the manifestation, physical manifestation of what has evolved in the bigger scene of things.
Do you think concrete is also a part of this strategy?
So concrete again, it's again to do with our fast way of constructing in which we have lost the sense of time. We see earlier monuments which we are trying to preserve, which are in ruins, which still hold so much value to us. There's a reason for it because these monuments never had a timeline for construction. So these
Hmm.
craftsmen
Hmm.
could give their best, There's no budgeting for those constructions, So they could give whatever available resources put in to, achieve those monuments. So this example, what we are living now is, the Sagrada Familia by Antonio Gaudi, still in construction, We have completed
Yes.
cities and, trees which are being built like UAE or other places, but, that's still in under construction. So, like I've started studying architecture, in 2005, but, this almost 20 years I've been seeing like the last part of the construction being done.
Construction still the yeah. And I don't know how
Yeah.
long it will go now. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no timeline to that, that updating. So the issue is, we have lost a sense of appreciation of time and, beauty and everything. So concrete or any other material, it's not bad, but, the way we use it extensively for anything and everything, pouring like plastic,
That's
some thought you think they out of it, how can we make cheap, quick? So this blind capitalism, this values of capitalism, after the industrial revolution, that's a major factor, which is, shaping us as humanity,
hmm.
everything from
Yeah,
politics to
that's correct.
wars.
I think it comes back to the point you said now. We are using more than we can chew.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I was talking to you, even in the beginning, your portfolio includes almost everything. As I said,
Mhm.
there are vases, there are kitchen objects. I was seeing there was some moon pendant that you had done a series of moon pendants.
Yeah.
And you're also well versed with automobiles. So, how does your approach change with
Mm.
changing category of these objects?
So basically, every project demands a certain, uh, approach to it. Basically, when working with craft, like you mentioned, vases and those mood vases, we are working with a craft called Bikriware. So we have to go back into the history of understanding the craft. There's a different time scale. It's a 700-year-old craft with lot of
Yeah.
historical and cultural references and techniques. So we can't suddenly update it to a very industrial process. So we have to respect what's been done before and just to add to it. So when that's there, there's a very different kind of approach and thought to the whole process. But when we're working with our industry, which is fairly modern, which is using new techniques, we've done labs.
Mm.
So then we have a different approach, a product which is more practical day-to-day use, and it uses a bit of technology, be it LED lamps or electronics where you have these dimmers and everything. So the
Mm.
approach is basically, determined by what craft you're working with, what
Mm.
techniques you're working, and who you're trying to cater to, basically, and what's the practicality or poetry behind. Sometimes you have to work a lot on poetry of objects, where we work with craft and luxury design. So other times, we have to look a lot into practicality, where we have,
Mm.
our day-to-day tools like lamps and furniture. So you have some
Huh.
furniture even
Yeah.
involves, complex ergonomics, and if it's a lifestyle project, where you have a table done in craft or something, or a chair. So they're not so much about, it's not so much about ergonomics, but it's so much, it's a lot to do with how you carry the craft and make it into a, luxury object, which is
Mm.
timeless, which can be a collectible, which can become a collectible, and heirloom, which can be passed from generation to generation.
Hmm. All right. All right. So if I was to translate this approach, like you said, now there is a craft and there is a history behind that, and how do you
Mm.
translate it for the modern times? And so if I
Mm.
have to translate this into architecture, would it be
Mm.
correct to assume whatever fancy restaurants who are
Mm.
themed around village or mud architecture, adobe architecture? So would it
Mm.
be fair to assume that this is also a typology of that? Like the approach would have been that.
Basically, talking about food, right? That's a major component, like the most important component of restaurant, right? Like
Mm.
that's what we go there for. So, but now, people have started something called experiences, because lives have become so empty
Yeah.
and deprived of certain. When we talk about village themed restaurant, why a village themed restaurant? Why not a village itself? Because the village has been taken away from us, with this capitalism. We have been moved
Mm.
into this urban spaces, which we deeply don't love, have no appreciation for, but that's catering to our economic needs and everything. But there's so much that's been taken away. So to cater to that, we just don't need food anymore. We need food for the soul. So maybe that's the reason
Mm. Yeah.
people want to give experiences and move into something like this themed architecture. But I don't think so. It's a very superficial bandage kind of. It's like a duck shot. Again, you'll get out edition.
Right.
You'll face what you have to face.
Even in landscape architecture, what generally we define landscape as is it's a controlled forest. So even if we are
Yeah.
creating some, dense vegetation
Mhm.
in any project, so it's again controlled, because I think the human tendency is to be able to tell everything, everything should be in a very controlled manner, where I know what is there, what is out there. I even if we go for adventures,
Mm.
we know that we are safe. So there is a
Mm.
inheritance of safety in our mind. So probably because of that, so we want everything, but
Mhm.
not in a
You can say that.
uncontrolled manner.
Yeah, nice way of putting it.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like to understand, like, what is your process of design?
For me, again, depends on the project, like, you are approaching it from poetry or practicality. So there's a scale of art and design, So you
Hmm.
go like too deep into a traditional craft, you're working with something traditional and, something very handmade and stuff, and something of not much practical use, then you have to pour in a lot of poetry in it. So, but something is practical, then, you on the extreme other side, then you have to do market research and, the customer needs, it becomes very empirical with numbers and values and everything and, tests and stuff. So that's the cross approach. So that's a idea that, that's where the idea generate, and executing it again is, everything has to be made, right? Like, even a craft product or, industrially produced product, both have to be produced in a certain way with, defined parameters, what there's a desired outcome that, that is associated with doing a product. So then it goes into, making the product, in a certain way. So that's the approach I take, making.
So if I want to ask you,
Making has been a major part of our studio, so
yeah, I
so
understand.
understanding
Yeah, so
something,
everything you,
first prototype has to be made. I feel like, more than most of the time, first prototype has to be made by us, so that, we understand what goes into it's we can actually design the production design. There's something called production design that happens, not just the product design, production design, how the product moves through, its production cycle. If typically you're doing a wood tray or something, there is a process of cutting the wood along certain grade desired in a desired way. Then, there's polishing, and, how that happens also has to be designed. It can't just you can't just leave it open to the manufacturer. Sometimes they're not experienced to do that, so that, we may design something and the final product may look something else because the wood wasn't polished in a certain way, or the grains are not in the direction what we desired, or the edges have cornered off because, the machine wasn't calibrated to darkness. So there are a lot of factors like this take place through the design cycle.
so if I were to ask you to, uh, create a watch panel, which is luxurious in nature probably, and which is still apt for older generation. So, like, how would you start the process with that? Because I understand you collaborate with architects and interior designers a lot, right? So you design things for them. So just to understand step by step process, like how do you start that?
Taste is very varied, so age is not a factor of taste. I mean, like, taste and use. What I feel, there are young people who would like to go back to something which is very traditional and old, or some old people would want to have something which is very
Right.
modern and contemporary. So it depends on that. And, if it's a specific taste for a, client, say, when you're working with, particular interior project, so then that's something that's specific to that person, which is necessitated by, their desire to, have a certain aesthetic or motives or something. So then that becomes very specific to them. It's basically custom design, I would say, a hook design.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So in that sense, it'll just be what they want, Some people are fascinated with something, say some motive, plants, something from nature or some geometry, So it becomes very specific to that. Or, some textures, someone wants a feeling of, like you say, Adobe architecture, they want mud-like surfaces. Uh, So, or someone likes very industrial finish where you use metal as a component, and, you shape the sheets of metal, castings or whatnot,
So it completely depends upon what the client's taste is.
Yeah.
So you try to understand first, like what they might
True.
be expecting out of that specific wall paneling or tile. Okay, okay, that's great. So I'm just curious to know, like, how do you figure out what is in their mind?
So for this, most of the clients we've worked with are like, industry clients, manufacturers, brand. So we have to understand what the brand is all about, what their price point is, what the consumer is like, and what kind of materials or production techniques they're comfortable with. So it starts there. Sometimes the client gives us a brief, a very specific brief with certain, requirements. And other times we something like, we have a lot of projects which are self-initiated. So we do the design by understanding what could fit in somewhere and then pitch it to them. Starts there. Most of our projects are self-initiated projects. So once we start talking to them, they might ask some things which are not, doable. So once we do design ourselves with our intuition, that's where the intuition comes in, with so much of experience and understanding.
Intuition,
Yeah.
that's the right word. Yes.
So we develop
Yes.
something and pitch it to them, and they're like, "Wow, this is what we need."
Right, right. And how do you ensure that every object that you work with, because there are multiple categories that you work in, how do you ensure Saif Faisal's design identity?
There's no basically identity as such. We try to make our products more meaningful, relevant, and these are the values we try to embody. So that works. I think that's what is something that I look to achieve in the object, my products and design or the objects. Basically, there's no style as such because I try to keep away from style. Because after some time it might become a burden to carry that style. Lots of architects, they develop a style, and they're like, I'm a brick architect, I'm a exposed concrete architect, and they, yeah, it work for a couple of projects very well, but you're forcefully fitting something which really doesn't belong. So style actually is a very negative thing. Values, I would say,
Right.
would be a very positive thing to carry in any design. So architects who think about just mud as sustainability may not do very well, but sustainability in the larger sense where we use the longevity becomes a key factor. So that works very well in terms of sustainability. So making something out of mud which falls apart in 10 years and redoing it and again, that's not quite sustainable.
That's correct. That's correct. So overall perspective is important
Said.
and values are important. And I think this is something that young architects can also learn from, like carrying values rather than definite style of work.
Taste matters a lot. I feel taste is almost a moral issue.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Can you elaborate? This is very interesting.
taste, what happens is, personal taste, we are working in a field, we are like chefs, So if we don't have appreciation or fine taste for food, we won't be able to cook for others, So there's a basic requirement, I would say, we in creative fields, you can't really train, no matter what the degree, what the schooling, whatever training, it doesn't help as long as you from within yourself cultivate a certain taste and certain perspective of looking at things. There's a lot of cultural misery that people carry, especially in there's a burden that they carry and, they try to pull that again and again, be it the color palette or the materials, we have a very bad habit of, as Indians, we have a very bad habit of using all the materials we can in a single project, It's like the thali we have, the food.
Yes.
Food. Yeah, so we can make 4 to 5 chutneys and sat and everything, 2 to 3 types of rotis, the papad, the rice and everything. And, we feel, more the merrier, sometimes it may not work that way because, sometimes one single thing which is done in a very fine way can be very fulfilling and tasty and doesn't spoil our palate. So that's where I would say essentialism is something that's part of my work, not me, but essential. Things which are relevant in a particular context. So that's something which I try to embody, in almost all my projects.
So is essentialism a part of your work only? Or is it a part of your personal life?
Definitely, it's like I said, it's when we talk about taste, it's a value, it's unique. It's not quite taste varies, but there's good and bad taste as well. So essentialism, when you embody in your life, only then you can translate that into, your work as well. Because when you yourself are a big spender or something, and when you're trying to create a very frugal essence for it, your mind, there's a contrast, it doesn't really add up. Your mind doesn't allow you to think in that direction. It doesn't allow you to think in terms of sustainability or those factors, because you don't limit yourself.
Yeah, that's right. I think basically a personality of
Definitely.
a person reflects in whatever they do, be it design, and I think even in business
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
right?
Uh, so it works. There are books which are written on essentialism, which talk about educating business managers about how to essentially manage materials, doing things which are relevant across different organizations. They have to manage a lot of things. They have to manage people, they have to manage production and whatnot. So by being essential, you're basically cutting off a lot of unnecessary burdens that may come. Everything is streamlined, everything is fine, everything is going in a very smooth fashion, and everything is very cohesive, and it's very harmonious, and there isn't some more predictable, and basically makes everything very structured and comfortable.
Mm. Yeah. So talking about you have been an entrepreneur since 2014, as I know. So what are the top three lessons that you have learned along your journey?
Thing is, you need to know what you want to do. You may not know the journey, but you have to have a fair idea of the destination. Passion is a very big part of it. You should not lose interest. You may face a lot of hurdles and things like that, and a lot of understanding has to be cultivated along the way. So you have to be very willing to give time and effort to that, because you don't know it all, right? A course doesn't teach you everything. So after that the journey of the career, you have to be willing enough to uh, dedicate yourself to that. So passion is another important thing, and have a bit of humility when you can learn things. Like if we are predetermined, we are rigid, then it becomes very difficult to accept things which are new, and uh, new, and which can actually basically make our journey better. So you might have planned along certain way, but something else comes along. You should be able to absorb that, and accept it, and readily accept it, and move along that.
So clarity, passion, and humility to learn. I mean, these are some amazing things. And being an entrepreneur myself, even, I am also reflecting back that yes, you have to grow in the journey a lot. You have to learn things with humility a lot. That's amazing. Yeah. So if you were to start your studio again today, what things would you do differently?
So basically, so I'm faced with such a question, there are like a lot of mistakes you'd want to avoid, and a lot of time that is being, wasted on things, that comes to the mind. But basically, I'm looking at back in retrospect. You can't really do that, because, that has actually shaped you.
So
Yeah.
basically, if
But
you
it's
didn't
a
do a
wishful thing.
mistake,
Yeah.
learn.
It's a wishful thinking,
Yeah.
but really, in reality, it doesn't work like that, because everything has shaped you, so you have to respect the goods and bads of it.
That's another amazing lesson. So I was wondering, many architects, they do delve into industrial design. And I think industrial design as a field has started from architecture. And even many colleges like SPA, they provide industrial design courses. So what would newcomers or what would architects like, can you give any do's and don'ts for people who are aspiring to be
So
industrial designers?
architects trying to dabble into industrial design may not work, because if it's a side thing, they've done a furniture with a carpenter, and suddenly they feel they can cater to a lar-
Very nice.
larger
Okay.
market. That it doesn't really work like that, because yeah,
Okay,
it
then.
doesn't.
Okay.
So basically, you have to have an understanding of the market and the industry in a very different way. I have a lot of my architect friends, who do one or two pieces, and suddenly then they feel like they can dabble into this, but it really requires a different kind of thought to get into this field. I was fortunate enough, I wanted to do automotive design, but there was no automotive design in India when I was starting. There was master's courses, in IIT Bombay, uh, and a couple of other places. I guess NID was giving a master's course, but no bachelor's industrial design or automotive design was offered to students in India. So someone suggested you can take up a basic design degree like architecture, and then get into automotive design, as a master's course, be it in India or abroad. So that's how it started, and I was fortunate enough to have a project that was running in my college in the mechanical department, which they had this Star project, this formula student that students from different universities build these cars, design and build the,
Yeah.
take it to the event, and participate. So you're competing on a very global platform. So you can't give excuses like, we come from India, we don't have this and that, but you have to do your best, do the best, not your best, but the best. So that's where I learned a lot about technology and manufacturing and materials and everything, and budgeting and, designing the full project, basically, not just the product, but, completing it in a time frame with the given guidelines and rules, and racing it there and presenting it there. So that gave me a huge experience. So architecture didn't help me much apart from, in how the environment and requirements of user. So that's what, it basically taught me like 5% of what industrial designers need to learn. But, this project gave me a lot of depth. So I was always an autodidact, trying to learn things on my own. So that helped a lot, to take up things, which were beyond my scope of working, if I was just as an architect doing the project, I would have done only ergonomics and probably the safety and things like that. But I got into suspension and brake and chassis design.
Oh.
So it was pretty much like a mechanical engineer. So that helped me do the products you see cross, the portfolio, So that when we work with craft, there is casting, metal casting. And when we're working with something else, is milling and CNC this and that, there's electronics that come in and parts that move, if you see most of our lamps, we have a lot of parts that move, the lamp. Yeah. So that
Right.
basically comes from that background, and not architecture. And wants to do industrial design, they can actually start from bachelor's, and mostly I feel, this is a field where you don't even need to go to college, you can just take up apprenticeship when you're 16 or 15. Earlier the better, to a 10 or 12-year-old kid could start off learning. And by the time they're like 20 or something, they'll be graduate. More, it's like artists, most of the industrial designers, if you see the successful industrial designers, they don't have degrees, art.
Correct. They just have a
And they're
flair and they have this
They're
no
very
taste
short.
for
So
design.
if you Mark Newson, he did a course in jewelry making. He is considered
Yeah.
uh, the best industrial designer of our times. He has done cars, he has done spacecraft,
Yeah.
he has done art design, he has done the
And
Apple Watch. And
yeah, and I think that right. And I think most industrial designers they have a very portfolio, which is why it's very intriguing to understand, that the basics, the fundamentals are still the same, whatever category you are picking.
These basically you can go back to Renaissance where these philosophers and sculptors and architects. The one person. Another thing which we're facing now is the specialization where we are schooled to do certain things.
Yes. The silos that I was talking about, right? Yeah.
That's the truth, So what we can go back to, like, moving away from this capitalist system of training people to do a specific job, we can look back to, just Greek, Persian polymath, where, Aristotle was a botanist and a philosopher. Ibn Sina, the great Persian doctor,
Right.
he was a philosopher and a doctor. So, things like this give us a different understanding, and we can create things which are very meaningful and relevant, not just cater to the industry to, pollute the world more and more and, make exploit the consumers with.
Yeah, I mean, so if you talk about the famous, not even architects or sculptors probably, but Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, who knows that he was not only a painter, he also had these machines that he built. He was also, and the Brunelleschi dome, it was not even built by an architect. He was a goldsmith. So I mean, this is such. We are working in so many silos, and we just think that we have been trained for this, and this is our path that we have to take. We don't think in other direction.
Even if we don't work in different directions, but we can learn a lot from other people, other field,
Right.
which makes our field a lot better. So you're a landscape designer. If you look at the horticulture or something, your gardens can become feeding gardens. They can still be beautifying, but they can actually cater to biodiversity or something. City needs that. You need little pockets of
Yeah, definitely.
reliefs or birds or something. The city is expanding and the forests are being taken away. And then you can cater to that in a way. So it becomes more meaningful, relevant, and contextual, and
But
the learning comes from other fields.
But the sad part is what we're talking about. It comes under permaculture.
Yeah.
It does not come under
So
landscape.
if we merge both,
And we are not even taught about that. Yes.
so if you merge both, you can have something which is very practical rather than we have this grass lawns, no one's allowed to step on because the grass gets spoiled, So yeah.
Yes.
So we have this premium real estate, which we are beautifying, but for what? Just to look at, So again, it's a very bandage kind of a treatment where, we'll give you a bit of greenery, but you have to, it's like a zoo, animals you can wash and away.
It's very.
That's it.
Yeah. That opened a lot of questions now, but I think let's stop. And it had been a great session, and I have learned a lot of things, and it had been more of a reflective session and probably a little bit of philosophy in that. But I think the audiences would learn a lot from your insight, and like working in silos that won't work in the coming days. And specialization courses might not be the best choice for people. And if someone has to be industrial designer, the preparation could start even from beginning. Right. So that's amazing there.
My pleasure speaking.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found Converse valuable, you can subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Also, please share your reviews on the show and the topics of discussions through comments. Let us know if you found anything interesting in particular. You can find all past episodes and know more about us on insight.ai. See you in the next episode.